Life, like the conversation, keeps changing. Get the first ever needs-matched life insurance that changes as your life changes.
Hello and welcome to another lockdown edition of the Dan Nicholl Show with BrightRock. This week we talk to a tennis commentator stuck at home. Robbie Koenig reflects on a game that is currently, like him, in lockdown. We also head down to the Cape and not France and meet up with Cheslin Kolbe, who got out of Toulouse just in time. But first, remember last week we were in Madrid with Luis Figo. Today we're with an even better footballer and in an even more exotic location as we swap Madrid for Cheshire and say hello, Michael Vaughan.
I played golf with Luis Figo at the Dunhill Links a few years ago. A lovely chap. And I'm not quite sure I'm in the same kind of breath as Luis Figo in football in terms. I think golf in terms I might be close, but football nowhere near.
I know golf is a huge passion at the moment. We can't play golf at the moment in South Africa. We're on a pretty stringent lockdown. Are you able to get the clubs out at the moment in the UK?
Yeah, I've got a garden that my 52-degree wedge gets used now and again, but unfortunately the balls keep travelling to the next door neighbours, and they've got a greenhouse in the garden. Yet to smash one of his windows, but he did give me a little stern look over the fence to say, no more, Mr. Vaughan, thank you very much. I'm not that good with the wedge, so a little bit of putting indoors, little bits of watching it on the television. The frustration of walking the dog on my local course just down the road is excruciating. The condition the courses are in, they're allowing the green staff to obviously keep the course in condition. It looks immaculate, but we're not allowed to play. Hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll be able to get the club down.
In South Africa, life is pretty strict and we're having to undergo isolation as a whole. We see a lot of coverage of the UK here on the news. What's life like at the moment other than the absence of golf?
I mean, we've just been given a 3-week lockdown, which, you know, that will take us to around 6.5 weeks from the first lockdown. You know, I think people are realising that this is a serious matter, and you've just got to do what the experts are saying. We've got to stay home. I think it's important to communicate. My mum and dad will be the first to admit it's probably the most I've spoken to them in the last 3 weeks as I have in the last 3 years. I've been on the phone to them pretty much every day on FaceTime. So there are a few positives that have come out of this. I think spending time with the family. You're the same as me, Dan. We do a lot of travelling. We spend a long time away from home, and to have this period with the kids, they're now back to home school, and I have to say I'm a shocking teacher. I'd be a shocking headmaster. Within 5 minutes, all three of them were in detention. So the sooner that they can get back to school, I think the better for all of us. But you know, I think it's times like this that the spirit has to come through. You look at Captain Tom Moore, who's raised over 17 million. He's going to be 100 on the 30th of April. You know, whatever that figure is, the inspiration that he's showing the country is for us to see. So there's so many difficult stories that you hear every day, but there's a lot of up kind of lifting. And obviously Captain Tom Moore is right at the top of the tree at the minute. He's kind of showing the British spirit. We're all getting behind him, and I think he's leading the way just to say, come on, you know, you don't have to go back all those years ago that they're in a world war for 5 years. Now we can't just lock ourselves down for a few weeks and try and stay indoors and try and stay safe and look after the front line on the NHS. You know, we're not quite doing a good service. We're just thinking all the time of those people on the front line, and the NHS doing a remarkable job in these times.
And as they are in South Africa, our health service is giving us a lot of inspiration and gets us through the tough times with, I think for you and for me, both revolve around exactly the same space, which is managing young children. Given the option, would it be a day of teaching the kids as homeschool teacher, Vaughan, or taking facing the new ball from Dale Steyn at the Wanderers on day one of a test match?
I mean, Dale Stein's probably knocked my off stump out of the ground more than any other bowler in the world. I think it was 3 or 4 times, and I keep getting sent the clip from Port Elizabeth. I think it might be one of his first Test match wickets where my off stump went flying out the ground. I've actually got one of the off stumps in my house that Dale at Lords managed to uproot out of the ground. I thought I'd better keep a bit of a momentum from a great bowler. I would still say, though, that trying to face Dale Steyn, as good as he was, with the ball swinging away at 90 miles an hour with those skiddy bouncers, I still think it's 20 times easier than having to cope with 3 kids. Going through their schedule, all the different lessons that they have to take part in. Yeah, of course, they get a demo from the teacher of what's supposed to happen. The teacher makes it sound very simple. But within 2 or 3 minutes, I think we're all finding that kids are quite temperamental. I'm sure when the teacher's there, they're not quite the same as when mum and dad are there trying to tell them off. So, yeah, we've got a detention room. It's generally full most days. So, yeah, I'm not in any way saying that Dale Steyn couldn't bowl, because he was one of the greatest I faced. But dealing with 3 kids is a damn sight harder.
You were a marginally better cricketer than I ever was. I think I'd probably take Dale Steyn as well over my 3-year-old and 5-year-old at the moment. Well, some wonderful memories, and we're trading on those memories at the moment in the absence of live sport. I know your social media feeds, Vaughany, are normally full of either annoying Indian cricket fans or watching the fortunes of your football teams. We can't do that at the moment. We're hopeful that before the end of the year we'll see some sport coming back. What's your view on the way forward for cricket and where we might find ourselves in the professional space?
You know as well as any, Dan, that cricket is one of those sports that is so reliable on the TV revenue. And Sky Sports, the BBC, have got a lot of the rights this year, will pay a huge amount of money. So the game will be trying to do the best that they can to make sure that, you know, those that are at home, I'm sure whether we get to semi-lockdown, whether we get to some kind of activities out of our houses over the course of the next 2 or 3 months, I think it's important that people get to see some kind of sport. I saw yesterday that the PGA had announced that in America that they will be playing in and around June behind closed doors. Again, I think if possible, it's the right thing for sports to do, is to get the games on. If it is behind closed doors, I think people need to see things. And, you know, hopefully, you know, maybe that'll be the way that all sports follow with the PGA. They'll see how that goes. Premier League football over here will be desperate to try and get that back being played around June, July. The Liverpool fans are going stir crazy, believing that it might be void this season. There's many Man United fans just saying, right, can it? That's out again next year. Liverpool, you haven't won a Premier League title still, but they deserve to win the league, and I'm sure in time that they will do. But it's just interesting times. It's unprecedented. I think week to week, everyone's just trying to react and see where we all are. Most importantly, it's the health of all our nations to make sure that we get through this without as many deaths as possible. You know, and at the end of it, if we can give a glimmer of hope and a glimmer of life with some sport and some live sport, well, that's going to be the icing on the case. But first and foremost, sport should be secondary, and we have to make sure that everyone's safe first.
Vaughany, thank you very much for the time. Good luck with the family. Stay safe, stay healthy, and fingers crossed we're in Scotland together later this year at the Dunhill and enjoying some sunshine and a return to normal life.
Let's hope so. Stay safe.
Right now on the world sporting calendar, it's a lot easier to tick off those events that are going ahead as opposed to those that have either been cancelled or postponed. Amongst those that will no longer be with us is one I was hoping to attend for the first time. I was going to be in the UK in July, and it looked as though the stars had aligned, and I might have been able to sneak myself into Wimbledon for the very first time. Unfortunately, Wimbledon will not be happening as scheduled. It means I won't be there, and it means probably South Africa's most well-known tennis personality won't be there either. Such is the nature of Corona, and so instead of catching him somewhere around the world on the tennis circuit, we've got him at home. Hello, Robbie Koenig.
Hey, Dan. How you doing, man? It's always good to speak to a Watershed College's first team tennis captain.
You have done your research, Robbie. You've done your research.
Yeah, no, it's good to be home, but obviously I'd prefer to be somewhere else in the world right now, commentating on tennis. But the tennis circuit really has been hit hard, DN.
It's an extraordinary world, and I think sport is desperately scrambling at some sense of what an end game or horizon might be. Where do you see tennis at the moment? Is there a chance that even in 2020 we might see some more professional tennis?
I think it's very doubtful. Right now, we're cancelled up until the end of Wimbledon, which is the 13th of July. In fact, it's actually a tricky one. It's 1 week after that for the women. Their tournament, the Rogers Cup in Quebec, has been cancelled. The men and the women alternate in Canada every year, Dan. 1 year we play in Toronto, 1 year we play in Montreal. It's interesting because the Quebec government has cancelled all sporting events. So that means the women's event is done. But because Toronto, I think, is in the Ontario province, they haven't cancelled it. So right now, the men's event is going on the same week as the women's event. But I highly doubt whether we'll get much tennis in North America. And that's pretty much August and a little bit of September for us. The US Open still plans to go ahead, but whether it actually does or not, tennis is one of those sports where you've got so many people coming from different parts of the world. So, that complicates issues. And the big thing the tour is dealing with right now, Dan, is really how to take care of the lower ranked players, because it's not like these team sports where guys have contracts that are guaranteed. In tennis, you've got to go out there and earn your money each and every week by playing. And it's the lower ranked guys who are getting hurt the most.
It's a tour that you've now become a very important part of, a very important voice of, so you know it better than most. The tennis career was fantastic, but it really seems like you found your true calling behind the microphone and bringing us the visuals of tennis tournaments right around the world.
I've been really blessed, Dan, to get into it, and it was a chance meeting how I got into it. I was coaching the year after I retired. That was 2006. I finished at the end of 2005, and a chance meeting with a friend of mine who was working with Tim Henman. He had worked on Tim Henman's website, and Jason lived just down the road from me in Southfields in London, actually right across the way from the All England Club. And he's like, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm involved in coaching." And I said, "What about you?" He says, "Well, I do this commentating for ATP Media. But actually, at the end of the year, they're looking for somebody to replace John Barrett." Now, of course, we grew up with John Barrett commentating. He was the voice of Wimbledon. John was getting old. I think he was turning 80 at the tail end of 2006. And they happened to be looking for a new commentator. And at the events, I was in India and Wales and Miami, and I was in Rome. And in between my coaching gigs, I went up to the booth and kind of did these trials just for fun because I had spare time. And actually in the July, one of the guys I was coaching dumped me, and I realized the fickle nature of coaching in tennis. 1 week you're hot, the next week you're not. And suddenly this commentating gig seemed quite appealing, and I got offered the job in about September of 2005 for the next season. And I've been doing it since 2006. And I tell you, the coolest thing, Dan, is being around and being front and center with the likes of the Federer-Nadal rivalry initially. Then you got the likes of Djokovic and Andy Murray coming to the party. And it's been such a golden era of tennis. And to be able to interact with these guys and chat with them and watch them play tennis, that is simply jaw-dropping. It's been the coolest thing, man. I've been so lucky.
Single best game you've been able to commentate on?
I'm gonna split in two, because when I did Andy Murray's first win at Wimbledon, I did that for radio, and I met Andy for the first time when he was about 50, and I played against him in Nottingham. So there was a personal connection there. And I remember going up to his mum, Judy, after the match, and I couldn't believe how good this 15-year-old kid was. And I said, "I tell you what, if your boy continues with his tennis, he's got a bright future in it one day." And to watch that progression from Andy losing those 4 Grand Slam finals previously to eventually winning his first one at the 5th time of asking at Wimbledon, that was pretty special. And then for television, probably 2017 Australian Open, when Roger beat Rafa in the final there, going 3-1 down in the 5th set to Nadal. And I remember my co-commentators turning to them and said, "I tell you what, this guy Nadal has got Federer again in a big match." And of course, Roger goes on to win the next 5 games, which was unheard of against Nadal.
Can you believe this? Hawkeye decides the outcome. It's in! Victory for Federer! He's champion in Australia for the fifth time, and it's major number 18 for the Swiss maestro.
It was an unbelievable scene as well. I'll tell you a story after that match. I was standing with my co-commentator in the corridor, and Roger happened to be walking down it, and there's 10, 15 security guards around him, and he's going to do all his major media duties, as you know these guys have to do after they win. And as he was coming down the corridor, he saw me and my co-commentator, who he knows well, Josh Eagle. Josh is an Aussie. And we were just offset to the back, and he's carrying the trophy, and he's got all these guys around him. And he sees us, and he stops everybody, and he walks over to Josh and I. And Josh gives him a high five and says, "Well done." And he turns to him and he points at the trophy and he goes, "China, what do you think?" and you know, little moments like that are really cool, man. Priceless.
That, in terms of competition, was as fierce a contest as we've seen between Nadal and Federer. But in terms of sheer spectacle, it would be hard to beat another match that they played a little earlier this year that you were very heavily involved with, and one that meant so much to Roger Federer, and I'm sure meant an enormous amount to you as a South African, and that was the match in Africa.
Tonight, we try to beat the world record as far as attendance at a tennis match is concerned. The number to beat is 42,217.
Here we go, Roger Federer.
It really was. And for me, the greatest thing about that, Dan, was that South Africans got to experience those two guys in living color. The energy that it brought to South Africa and to Cape Town. I was there a couple of days before the event, and it really was the words on everyone's lips. And for South Africans to see those guys play and just interact with them, that was the biggest joy that I got. Of course, a spectacular event, you know, being in front there of 50-odd thousand people. The noise was incredible. It was such a beautiful day. We were worried because the day before the weather was horrendous, windy as hell. But everything just came together. Everybody involved in it did such a good job. My good friend, former doubles partner, JL Diaga, together with Holger Losch, I thought they did an incredible job. The planning, as you know, for these kind of events, you do downhill links and these big kind of golf events, the planning that goes in is monumental. Every single detail was taken care of. So big props to everybody concerned. And again, so awesome to be part of that.
Robbie, it's always an absolute pleasure hearing you and flying that South African flag around the world with tennis. Keep strong and keep safe while we need to, and we'll listen out for you, and hopefully it's not too much longer until tennis does resume.
Yes, Dan. Fingers crossed, man.
So there we go. Robbie Koenig, the voice of tennis right around the world, doing South Africa proud and calling games, not at the moment, but hopefully not too long from now. Well, we kicked off the show from just outside Cheshire with former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan. I thought we would wrap up the show in France, but instead the hottest property in French rugby at the moment has escaped and returned home, and so we find him in Cape Town. Hello, Cheslin Kolbe.
Hello, Ben. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to see you looking so happy and healthy and strong, and that you're back in South Africa. I'm guessing you skipped out of France just in time.
No, you definitely want to be at home with your family and everyone. I was fortunate to end up staying in Cape Town because I was meant to fly out to Toulouse on the 16th of April. So I literally just missed it. Otherwise, I would have been stuck in France all by myself. My family would still be in Cape Town. So it wouldn't be fun at all, but I'm glad to still be in Cape Town.
As much as you're clearly relishing the time at home at the moment, Cheslin, it does look as though both on and off the field, you've made a really good second home in France.
No, I'm definitely enjoying France. Myself and my family, we've really adapted, and the club and everybody in Toulouse has welcomed us with open arms. So we're enjoying our time over there. Still have a few years left in Toulouse. We're also looking forward to when everything settles down regarding this coronavirus, that we can head back and hopefully get back onto the field and share some special memories with the team and the club again.
Cheslin, we had Dwayne Vermeulen on the show last season, and he admitted that the biggest attraction of being home was Brannefein and Braaivleis. What do you miss most about life in South Africa when you are in France?
The thing that I probably miss the most would probably be Nando's. So whenever I do come to South Africa, that's the first place I stop at, whether it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I'll make sure that I get to Nando's before I get to bed.
In and amongst spending time with the family and trying to keep fit and healthy, have you had a chance to watch that 2019 World Cup final again?
Then I've probably watched it 10 times already. It's a memory. It's something that will never ever fade away from me. And I probably guess for the whole of South Africa. It's been a phenomenal moment for me as a player, and I'm sure for the team, for us to win the Rugby World Cup 2019 and just bringing it back to South Africa to enjoy that moment with everyone that's been supporting us, everybody that's watching us on TV and being at the stadium. So to share it with them, it's been phenomenal and we're blessed. But yeah, just for me to top it off was just scoring in the final. I think it's a memory that I will never ever forget, and it's something I can share with many people out there as I grow older.
Do you think Owen Farrell has been watching it again during the lockdown?
Then I'm not too sure about that, but if he has, it's probably not what they wanted on the day. But I'm just chuffed that we could pull through the final and bring the cup of South Africa.
What I love most about the Cheslin Kolbe story is you've shown you the complete package, the tackle, the work rate, reading the game, but being that bolt of lightning is still the highlight. Do you practice those moves? Do you rehearse them, or is it pure instinct?
Yes, Dan, to be honest, things like that happen so fast. It's spur of the moment, but it's things I visualize things before I get onto the field. I'll try out things during training throughout the week. And then just the moment of me before I scored the final, as I got the pass from Peter Steph, the first thing I just looked how far I was from the try line, and I just told myself, just get to the white line as fast as you can and just avoid getting tackled. So yeah, for me, I think it's probably instinct. It's things you do train, but it just happens so fast. And just another regard with me, being critical a lot regarding my size, and for me, obviously, a lot will go regarding my defense, and it's something I've worked on a lot at the club, and especially with Coach Job Nicholl. I've been working with him since 2012 with under 19, so I've known his philosophy and what is wanted in defense. So that's helped quite a lot, but I just make sure that I can work and get better each and every time in my defense.
Well, that talent that you have makes you the hottest property in world rugby in the 15-man game. It also makes you rather useful in sevens, though. You must have given some thought as to whether you're going to the Olympics or playing the British and Irish Lions, given that those two now clash in 2021.
I'll leave that up to God's hands. People saying that everything is probably going to be clashing with each other, be playing at the same time, but you never know, it might just be pushed a month or a month and a half later. So I'm holding thumbs that maybe things will work on and I can hopefully maybe be part of both those spectacular tournaments.
Well, Cheslin, if you do opt for the Lions tour, I've been working out in my garden, practicing sidestepping the lawnmower and being as Kolbe-like as I can. So I'm ready to cover for you in Tokyo if needed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan. Yes, really appreciate it.
Cheslin, enjoy the time you've got in the Cape. Best of luck when you get back to France. I know you're dying to jump into those plates of snails and frogs' legs and other French delicacies. And thank you again for 2019. We can't say it enough to all of you as a squad, but you in particular, that moment you gave us, I think when you scored that try, you felt a seismic shift in South Africa as 60-odd million people jumped up and then landed landed at the same time with such great excitement. So I know you know how much it means to us, but thanks again nonetheless, and keep cherishing those memories as you work your way through lockdown.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you for having me on the show. It's really good to chat to you. And yeah, thank you to South Africa for supporting us last year. And hopefully we can just keep making you guys proud.
Well, there we go. Cheslin Kolbe. And yes, he is wearing a T-shirt from his 14th birthday to amplify those guns and make me feel more self-conscious. Cheslin, thank you. Thank you too to Michael Vaughan and to Robbie Koenig, waiting to get back onto the tennis circuit. When will normal sport resume? We don't know, but until it does, we'll keep going with more lockdown episodes of the Dan Nicholl Show with BrightRock. Next week, we head to New Zealand to catch up with All Black great Sir John Cohen. Kagiso Rabada tells us about his new podcast business, and Kelly Slater is surfing in Sydney. See you next week. Goodbye.
Life, like the conversation, keeps changing. Get the first ever needs-matched life insurance that changes as your life changes.